Welcome to Tom Golly Questions Everything. Please be sure to like, follow, subscribe on all social media and on YouTube. Today's special guest is awesome. I think if you're a CCM fan, and you should be, I think you're probably familiar with a couple of his songs. But with me today is Austin French. What's up, dude?
Hey, man. Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. I mean, I honestly don't know why you're here. No. But man, it is just seriously so cool when I get opportunities to talk with people like you, obviously who have the success you have, but also have some of the harder, I guess, some of the harder stories. I mean, because it's not all peaches and cream.
Yeah.
It's not all radio singles and tours. There's a lot to it. And there's a lot of tough things you learn in life in general that a lot of people don't typically know about, because you go on a Christian radio show, they're not going to want to go there. They're going to talk about this stuff. So I feel like what I love is having people on a podcast is that we try to dive into some of the more honest and real stuff.
Yeah.
So, and it's totally okay to do that here. Yeah. We're not going to do the, 5 fast facts or Bible trivia. We're not doing that here. I mean, unless it really is near and dear to
There
heart,
you go. There you go.
So, man, what has been the last couple years like since coming out of the COVID thing for you? Like, what's that been like?
Yeah. We had a lot of momentum going into 2020. I feel like, as anyone in the independent world would, playing youth groups and playing, youth conferences and a kind of leveling up kind of thing. But, still just being faithful with every moment that we had. Got a record deal, put out some songs, praise the Lord, like the world wanted them. You just hope that the songs are going to connect. And as that began to happen, the opportunities began to get more, and then we got on the biggest tour that I had ever been on. We did Winter Jam, and had a crazy, schedule for 2020. A ton of shows, a ton of opportunities, things that I never would have dreamed of, and it felt like this is it. Like, we've been working for this, and then 2020 happened. As we all know, I bought way too much toilet paper. That's on me. But everything stopped. And I had a feeling whenever all that happened that there was going to be a dilemma, whether things could get back to where they were or things were going to go in a different path. And I think that happened for a lot of artists, where we questioned why we do what we do. Yep. We questioned, is it worth it? Mm-hmm. And we questioned, like, how much can I stay home? Yep. And these are the questions that were going through my head. And so a lot of clarity came, for me in the past few years.
I think for me, I would say that one of the big questions that I had to tackle almost immediately was, if being a internet live streaming singer is the new normal. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, no, it wasn't even a question. I was just like, if this is the new normal, bye, done. Because, like, for me, I don't know. I'd rather just do a podcast than, hey guys, let's play a few songs. I just don't feel like that connects in the same way that being on a stage or even in a room with people really does. So, I mean, I know that for me, that was, I think, a lot, and I'm not alone in that. A lot of people were like, I don't want to do this internet like live stream thing.
It's hard.
It's super
different.
hard. It doesn't connect the same way, in my opinion. And I just think that there's so I think that sort of really disillusions some people. At least for me too. It made me question, like, well, why isn't doing this on a live stream good enough if I just love doing it?
Yeah.
So, like, for me, it's like, wait, do I have an ego problem? Is this about needing to feel like a star? Wait, I need to take a big step back here.
Yeah, no, I get it. The challenge I have with the whole live stream thing was that I went from feeling like a minister to feeling like a service. Like, that someone could just, stop in for a few seconds and see if they liked it or not. Yeah. And then they could pop around to someone else's live stream. And there's a difference when you're doing a show in a room with people that you realize that you have, number one, you have to gain their trust, and then number two, you get to present something that, unless they're going to be pretty rude and just walk out the door, they're there for however long your concert is. And so you have a chance to take people on a journey.
Yeah.
What I missed about that's what I missed about doing the live stream stuff, is that our attention span, there's tons of studies that show this, have gotten shorter and shorter and shorter. And the reason that TV shows get shorter and shorter and shorter is because our attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. And, that's, I have a problem with that.
Yeah.
I have a problem with creating something, we talked a little bit before the podcast, but if you take anything out of context, like if you take 30 seconds of this conversation that we're about to have, and that's all you listen to, it's not going to be a full lens of who I am, who you are, and how we really feel, because it's a snippet. Right? And that's what live streams were to me. It was like, people were going to check in for a snippet and not really stay for the entire
And it's
journey.
hard not to get the Facebook algorithm crushed my soul during that period. Because, if I used to go live on Facebook just randomly, boom, it's like 30, 40, 50 people, 60 people, all right, people are here. Hi, guys, what's up? And then, COVID happened, and it was like, there's 6 people here now.
Yeah.
Oh, now there's none. Oh, okay. But so what I tried to do was try to create more of an engaged, okay, I'm going to do this in a Zoom room. So maybe it's not scrolling to my feed. Come to the Zoom room, and I saw that some people are doing tickets.
Yeah.
And that was fine, because I felt like, well, cool. Then if people pay $10, they'll actually come in. Well, it's crazy. We sold 30, 40 tickets, and 7 people actually tuned in, and you're like, oh, hi, 7 people. And then I felt bad, because I'm like, well, why did all these people give me money to not come to watch this? Okay, that didn't make sense. But then, and then I'm thinking, okay, I spent most of the day running the sound checks and how's this look? How's this sound? Worked my tail off for this to be the best experience I can make it. And then so what I did, I set it up where between songs, everyone in the room would be unmuted, so everyone could talk and be like, hey, can you play this song? Or we can interact. And I loved it.
Yeah.
And then I actually cut it short. I was supposed to do 5 more songs. I cut it short after 1 more, because someone was someone had asked a question earlier that they had typed it in during the song. So I answered it in between that and the next one. And they're I was like, oh, hello? Can you hear me? I just said, I just answered your question. And she goes, oh, sorry. And she shows me her tablet. She's watching someone else's live stream at the exact same time.
Oh, wow.
And I'm just like, you know what?
Wow.
Yeah, guys, so we got 1 more song. I cut it off right there, because I was just like, you know what? This was not, come on.
Yeah.
It's
crazy how busy we were when the world shut down.
Yeah.
We had nothing going
so
on.
I'm just like, why would you do that to me? Go. I literally was like, hey, man, there's lots of great live streams tonight, so go check them out. See you later. And I vowed, I'm not doing live stream concerts ever again. No, thank you. Because, I feel like, and I think in that moment it taught me a lot. Man, it taught me a lot, actually. And I feel like not long after that, I heard a sermon that made me think of that moment and went, wow, now I know how God feels. When he's like, I want your attention. And I'm like, well, I'm okay, but I'm doing this too. So it kind of, God loves to use experiences that I go through to kind of show me now you know how I feel, buddy.
Yeah.
But it was challenging, because I just wanted to give people something to of value. Yeah. And then it didn't feel valuable, it was valuable to them. So I'm like, well, I'm going to do something else now, And I think that that's the challenge now is, I think in some ways my view of what's going on with music or live music is, I think in a lot of ways people do value it, and I think it's coming back, but it's still not quite where it was.
Yeah, no, it looks different. It definitely looks different now. We've experienced that on the road already with as with the amount of tour dates or the attendance at those dates, I mean, everybody's feeling it, and it's slowly. I mean, it's. I don't know if it'll ever get back to what it used to be.
Yeah,
but
I mean, I would say, like, as I did shows, and I did do a small acoustic tour in 2020. I actually got a lot of hate. Now, people don't typically come at me normally, but I mean, behind my back, there was a lot of like, I can't believe he's going out touring during COVID, and it's like, well. There was a bunch of churches that were like, yeah, we'll have an acoustic concert on the lawn.
Yeah, we did the same thing. Yeah.
And, but the thing was, like, even then, it just didn't feel the same. And then 2021, I did a handful of festivals and shows, and even that still felt something was off. Like, this isn't the same.
Yeah.
And like, I haven't done any shows this year. I'm only doing one as of right now. And it's like, it just, none of it feels the same, and I don't know why.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot. 2020 taught us a lot, and I think people's time they have dedicated to other things now, and too with the whole live stream thing that we just talked about. People are so used to their artists that they would go, sit in a nosebleed section to see, is now even more available on Instagram Live, where you get to be in their living room, or whatever it is. And so people, they used to go to shows to feel a connection with a song. In the CCM world, it's always a song, not the artist. It's a song, then the artist, right? And so you would go to a show to hear that song, hopefully connect with that artist. And then if you ever wanted to connect to that artist, you had to buy a meet and greet, or you had to show up at their merch table and wait in a line.
Yeah.
Why wait in lines anymore? When they have scheduled times on their couch that they go live and talk to and respond to comments, Yeah,
no, and it's funny what you just said about, like, people, it's the song, then the artist, because half the time people don't know who sings what.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, I used to love it. So, people tell me, probably not so much anymore, because I've worked hard to not sound like anybody else but me. But for a long time, I always was like, I want to sound like Bart from Mercy Me.
Yeah.
So I would cover a song and sing it very similar to him, try to kind of be tonally the similar. And then so people literally would come up to me after doing a cover of one of their songs, be like, I love your song. It's on the radio all the time. It's like, you have no,
not mine.
Not me. Thank you, though. Like, that means a lot that you actually think that I'm that guy, or that's me. Really appreciate that.
It happens to everybody. I did a show with Ryan Stevenson, one of my good friends, and he cannot be more opposite of me. Red hair, 6'4", he's tall, tatted up. I am not. I'm very short. I'm 5'7", brown hair. Our stories are completely different, and he sings an hour. I was singing like 15 minutes, And someone came up to me, my merch booth, my face on my banner, Ryan right next to me at his booth, and we're just talking to anybody and everybody, and a lady comes up to me, Ryan, your song, Eye of the Storm, has changed my life. And then she just grabs me and sobbing on my shoulder. And you're like, okay, what do I do here? Like, you're actually mistaken. It's not me. I'm just like, well, I'm just so glad that song, affected your life. And that's all I could do. But they don't care who you are. And I'm okay with that. I'm actually okay with that, because I don't know, there's a level of being an artist that can feel a little bit like an ego thing, where you're like, how many people know my name?
That's true. Yeah.
And I'm actually not in it for that. Like, I at the end of the day, I say this at my concerts, but like, if you leave and you forget who Austin French is, that's fine with me. I'm okay with that. But if you leave that concert never hearing the name of Jesus, there's a problem.
Yeah.
And so I'll take the ladies grabbing me and sobbing because they think I wrote a song. I'll take that any day, because I would rather that than someone be like, you are my idol. Dude, those words shake me to my core, because I'm like, I don't want to be someone's idol.
Yeah.
The Bible's very clear about what idols do.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be someone's idol. I would love to be an inspiration for someone, like Paul talks about. It was like, hey, like, I want to look like Jesus. Maybe if you're inspired by me,
I'd rather be someone's like a cautionary tale. Like, like
don't be this.
Don't be this. Watch what, like,
right.
Don't do what I did.
Yeah. I think but I do think we are called to point to something greater than ourselves. And I think that is, honestly, if I could tell you that the greatest thing I struggle with as an artist is when people are looking at me as the end all and not looking at what I'm trying to point to. And I want to be a reason that someone falls in love with Jesus, not with Austin French. I'm grateful to be a part of someone's story, someone's journey, but that's it. I want to be a part. I don't want to be the story. I'm not here to handle that. And so like if people don't know my name, I don't take it personally anymore. I'm kind of like, well, actually, cool. Like, let me tell you about someone who's greater than Austin French. So
it sounds like you've definitely stayed fully connected to your why.
Absolutely.
And I know that, at least for me, like my why can like mold and shape depending on the season.
Yeah.
But like I would say that that's one thing for me, like trying to cling to that why, or remembering that, like, wait a minute, like for a long time, I convinced myself, okay, yeah, my why is exactly what you just said, which is like, I want to be the reason people came to Jesus and all that, which is true. But my ultimate real why was to, my hope was to share my story with people, and that I was a guy who wouldn't have been caught dead in a church. If I found out you were like, for lack of a better way to say it, like I was the type of guy where I felt like if you were one of them Bible thumpers, man, like, oh, you're offended by cuss words. Well, hey, let me tell you a bunch of them.
Yeah.
Like I just would like, cause I was that guy, and for God to get a hold of me and show me something completely different and how off my perspectives had been in my whole life. And then to be able to be a guy who, like, I wasn't a singer. I wasn't in chorus in school. I didn't do any of that. I like badly sung along to songs in the car. And all of a sudden, like, here I am singing churches and, then moved to Nashville, and because I really felt like this is where God's leading me, I'm going to follow it. So my whole why was like, hey, look what God has done in my life, and look what he's doing with someone who you'd least expect to be doing this. Like maybe that's the, for me, it was always like, hey, I hope people go, whoa, maybe he could use me too.
Yeah.
And maybe it's singing, maybe it's not, maybe it's, anything. Maybe it's, that one person who's like, I would love to tell people about Jesus from a pulpit and preach, and have all these reasons why you're not qualified. Well, just, if you're supposed to do it, and you really feel called to it, just take the steps, follow it.
Yeah.
And so like that was my original, like, this is why. And I've lost sight of that so many times, trying to get to like, oh, I want to lead people to Jesus. I want to change lives. I want to do this and I want to do that and I want to impact this. And it's like, and I noticed that anytime I veer off that original why of like, hey, I want to show people that what's possible with, if you follow God's lead. And it's so hard to get, like, to not get swayed. And it sounds to me like you've just really stayed steadfast in that why of like, this is it. No matter what else, I'm not going to have this veer.
Yeah.
So how have you done that? How have you been able to just stay, it's about this and period.
Yeah.
Not like, well, this album could be marketed this way and this really feels good to chase this way of going about what we do.
Yeah.
So like, how have you been able to do that?
Man, I had good people in my life early on that they weren't artists, they were pastors. And there, in fact, one of my favorite stories is when I was 18, and I'd done bands and stuff through high school, and I had my mom who was a worship leader at our church, but also a music teacher. And the reason I fell in love with music is because it was in my home all the time. And then 13 is when I accepted Jesus, and then I found out I could write songs that pointed people to Jesus, and so I felt like that was what I was going to do. And then so I started writing songs and traveling, and it just was a youth pastor calling another youth pastor, like, you should have these kids in. And then I didn't really think I was going to do this for the rest of my life. And then so I was 18, and I was serving in a college ministry, and this guy comes up to me. It's the pastor of the church one day. I was like, hey, man, our worship pastor's leaving. We're a church plant in a gymnasium. Like, we can't really pay a ton, but would you be willing to be like a worship pastor here? And I'm like, dude, I'm 18. I'm literally in like 3 weeks into online ministry school, and you're asking me to be a worship pastor and shepherd people. Why not? I just jumped in, and but and a part of me originally thought, I was like, well, I get to lead worship every Sunday. How cool is this? Like, I get to use my gift. And then
it's harder than people think it is.
Oh, and then it was way different than I thought it was. I wasn't just singing. I wasn't just scheduling people. I was a worship pastor, and I had to meet people where they were at. I had to lead people. I had to shepherd people.
I had to deal with emails going like, that song's unbiblical.
Totally. And but it was at a staff meeting. Where it was my first week, and the executive pastor, I'll never forget, my first week there, I had all these things I thought I was going to do that day. And he was like, hey, we're welcome Austin on staff, or welcome to the team. He was like, Austin, you're with me after the meeting. I'm like, awesome, great, what are we doing? We're going to lunch, what's up? He was like, hey, go grab the toilet brush, I'll grab the plunger. I'm like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, we clean the bathrooms here. And if you can't be faithful with a toilet brush, you can't be faithful with a microphone. And he was like, you're going to serve people. And that's what ministry is. You're going to serve people here. And that is going to be 95% of what you do. The rest of the 5% is Sunday is what people see.
That's right.
And so, man, the why for me is I'm over here with a toilet brush, and I'm willing to serve people when people don't look.
Yeah.
I'm willing to lift up people when the cameras aren't on. I'm willing to write these songs whether radio ever plays them or not. Yeah. And I really attribute a lot of that to the incredible pastors in my life who took the time to show me the 95% that was required.
Yeah.
Because the 95% most people won't see.
Yeah.
5% is what people know me as.
Yeah.
And the 95% is way more important than the 5.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of the why I remind myself of that every day. I have an incredible wife who reminds me that as well. And it's, man, I would be a terrible dad if I was leaving my kids at home just so people bought a t-shirt, like I would be. But if I'm leaving home, and a lot of people talk about sacrificing your family on the altar of your ministry. Man, I felt that burden, and I was on tour with Casting Crowns, these guys who I felt like were legends in my eyes. And I sat down, not with Mark Hall, the lead singer of the band. I saw him, and we talked, and we became friends, but I became more friends with his wife, who was actually their tour manager.
Yeah.
And I sat down with her, and I'm like, how have you guys figured this out? I feel like I am forced with the choice whether I'm going to sacrifice my family for my ministry. She's like, you got it wrong. This is your ministry. This is your family sacrifice for your ministry. It's not your ministry. It's like, if you believe that when you got married, the two became one, that your family is one, she said, don't ever take a show without asking your wife. Mm-hmm. Don't ever take a tour
that makes sense.
Without asking your wife.
Mm-hmm.
If your wife says that she needs you home, be home. And she's like, and the Lord will provide.
Yeah.
Like, just take that into account. And so I've had amazing people like that in my life who have shown me a different way of looking at ministry.
Yeah.
And shown me about serving others and put others first. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's smart. I mean, I think anyone who's ever anyone that's ever been in my van and hit the road with me knows, like, you know, I always make it a point to just like always try to serve the guys who are out on the road with me. Like, it's never like they're not there to be my servants. I mean, sure, they'll absolutely help and you know, or if it's been a long day and I forgot something in the van, they'll gladly run out and get it for me.
Yeah.
But it's never a, you must do this. It's, hey, and the reason is because they know I do the exact same thing for them.
To serve people, right?
So for me, it's like, yeah, it starts with the people who are in the van with you, and then that needs to extend, you know. And I've seen it done wrong. I mean, I've been at shows and festivals with other crews, other bands, and it's like, man, like there's like a lot of that crew is running around in fear of getting fired, like, you know, because like they have to make sure that he's happy or she's happy, and it's like, that sucks.
It does.
I don't want to be that guy.
And it happens.
But I feel like, you know, yeah, you're right. Like having people around you that, you know, you can serve and that are willing to serve the cause of what you're doing, and also be willing to hold you accountable to be like, dude, what are you doing? You
totally.
know? That's key.
I would say this is something, and you actually know my drummer, Jonathan.
I do, yeah.
And you can ask him this question, and it's something that we are very vocal about on the road. I've seen marriages fall apart on the road. I've seen, you know, I've seen the temptations that come out on the road, and I am with my band so much that if all they are is yes men, then I could get away with anything I wanted. Mm-hmm. So I invite, before I even bring these guys on the road with me, like, if you see crap in my life, call it out. Like, I'm not going to fire you for holding me accountable. I need you.
Oh, yeah.
Like, if we are brothers and we're out here together, I'm going to fight for your family. I need you to be a good enough friend to help me fight for mine.
Yeah.
And that's something that we're very straight up with in our crew, in our camp. And, you know, I hear stories of other musicians where it's not welcomed. And it does hurt my heart a lot, because I know how toxic the road can be if you let it. And that's something we strive to keep, like, protected in our crew. Yeah. And it's like, guys, like, we're brothers. Like, and just because I'm the guy up front with a microphone doesn't make me more important than you.
You know, and the hard part with what you just said, too, is, like, you know, sometimes it's hard. Like, at least me, I can't speak for everybody, and I think you might be similar. Like, you grow to care about these guys.
Yeah.
You know, and they feel like family. And then what happens is, so you would welcome the call out, the accountability.
Yeah.
And they usually claim to until you actually do it.
Yeah.
Then quickly you can become the bad guy, or, you know, their ego is so lost in, like, you know, no, man, it was not like that. I can't believe you'd ever accuse me of that. It's like, well, you're on a dating app, bro.
Yeah.
And, you know, and you got interrupted by your wife's phone call. Like, you know what I mean? What are you doing?
Yeah.
So sometimes that can be tough too, when it's like, man, that accountability isn't two ways.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing for me. And, you know, so I've made it pretty clear with any of my guys, like, look, you know, you want to do a bunch of dumb stuff in your life. Like, I can't babysit you full time, but like, when you're out on the road with me, this is what we're here to do, and this is why we're here to do it.
Yeah.
And that's how it's going to be.
Yeah.
Don't do that stuff on my watch, because I'm not gonna let you do it. Like, I'm not just gonna turn a blind eye.
Yeah.
And don't you dare turn a blind eye if it's the other way around.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like,
totally.
You know, and I think that's key. And I've talked about this before. Like, I was a guest on, I don't know if you know Marty Keith, but he's got a podcast called You Can Make a Living in the music industry. You know, when I talked about the importance of having mentors, having people willing to just kind of help you steer the ship, you know, and I'm always reminded of, like, the story of Moses having his arms held up. Like, he couldn't have done that on his own.
Right.
So, and that's key. I mean, in anything, it's people that make things happen. And if we don't surround ourselves with the right people, man, it can get pretty dicey quick.
For sure.
You
and value your team, and put value in your team, you know?
I mean, one thing that I appreciate, so I have this drummer, Chris, that comes out on the road with me, really good dude. And he's always had a ministry mindset, even when, you know, maybe that's not even what's going on in the moment. You know, like we had a great time one time at a Cracker Barrel. I mean, we were just cracking up. I mean, literally everyone who was in the room, like, almost like apparently somebody asked to move tables to be closer to us because
amazing. As
it
long
just
as they
looked
brought
like
biscuits,
fun,
you know.
right? Oh yeah, but we met a guy there who was like, hey, yeah, we're he's asking questions, like, oh, what do you guys do? What do you hear? And he turned out to be a pastor, and he has some ministry that he was doing, and we just had a really good talk with him, and we're like, oh, well, good to see you, bye, and we're like halfway through the parking lot, and Chris comes running out, go, hey guys, we should go pray with him. And I'm like, what? Oh, why? And he's like, well, dude, man, he's like, we're having a really good night. And he's like, and a pastor appears. Like, maybe we need it. Maybe he needs it. I'm like, oh, dude, let's go. Good call. I didn't even think of it.
Yeah.
So having guys like him who always had that mindset, because, my mind's already on like, okay, we got an hour to the hotel.
Yeah.
We got this, like, because unfortunately, I'm my own tour manager. I'm my own lighting guy. I'm my own everything. So I don't get to just be laser focused.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful when you got people like that.
Yeah, man.
So,
I think that's great.
Yeah.
You need that.
So for you, clearly COVID, it was what it was. So like most artists, you discovered that like without touring and thanks to COVID, there isn't a whole lot of income to be made. So like, have you figured out like, okay, there are other things that I can do to help support my family?
Totally. The side hustle question.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, man. I have multiple side hustles. And I'm passionate about all of them. And here's the thing. It wasn't, okay, music is not making me the money that I need to make to provide for my family. For me, I've been an entrepreneur since I was like a kid. Like my mom, I remember this is the first job I ever had. I was 7 years old, and I had a yearbook that was only $10 from my school, and my parents told me no. They were like, we don't have $10 to give you like that. And it's, you're in kindergarten or first grade. Why do you need a yearbook? And I was like, well, it was really important to me because all my friends were going to get one. And so a buddy of mine, we decided that we were going to start a neighborhood business. And we had no lawnmowers, no equipment, but we decided we would show up to people's house that we've seen them cutting their grass before. We've seen them washing their dogs, watering their lawn. And we said, we'll do that for you with your stuff. As long as you pay us. And all we asked was for $5 a time. And so we started a neighborhood dog washing business.
Okay.
I cut one guy's lawn. He never let me cut it again because it was terrible. I used his riding mower and almost crashed it. Broke a blade on a root, but he still paid me $5, and I got my yearbook. I did enough of saving up, and I was able to get a yearbook. And I even bought my sister's yearbook because I had enough money to do that.
Oh.
And so I was like,
Big
man,
spender.
Yeah, I made $20. Let's go. And but I learned then that I could work for the things that were important for me, and that everything wasn't going to be handed to me. And we never had a lot of money growing up. My parents got a divorce when I was 8, and then my mom was a single mom with 3 jobs, trying to make ends meet for 3 kids. And we lived in a single wide trailer, and that's how I grew up. And so even as an 8-year-old kid, I realized mom was struggling to pay the rent.
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned how to play the guitar. And as soon as I learned to play the guitar, I wasn't great, but I knew other people wanted to learn how to play the guitar. And my mom had been teaching music in our living room growing up. So I knew that you could charge people to teach them how to sing and teach them how to play the piano. I was like, well, I have friends that want to learn how to play the guitar. And I had discovered YouTube. And so most of what I learned about guitar was from YouTube. But they weren't going on YouTube.
Let me guess. It was was it the Marty Schwartz videos?
Probably. Probably.
That's how, because I learned how to play. I can't play guitar great at all. I play G. All I knew I needed to learn G, C, E minor, D, A minor, and a capo, and I could do enough. I could fake it.
Dude, I was the king of that. Like I got on YouTube an hour before my students showed up to learn what I was going to teach them. And I taught myself through YouTube, and then taught other people what I had just learned. But
now, were you to a point where they were like, Austin, can you teach me an F chord? You don't need an F chord. You don't need it. You don't need it.
Listen, okay, I started playing guitar because of John Mayer, and if you're gonna learn how to play the guitar like John Mayer, you're gonna have to learn the F chord every now and then. And so, bar chords was just a part of it, and but so I had good influences in my life where I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to learn more than just the standard worship chords, right? I'm gonna have to learn how to read tabs, and I'm gonna have to play lead and do licks and things like that. And
you know
riffs.
what's crazy? So I used to work for UPS. I was a UPS delivery driver for 7 years, back from I think like 2003 till 2010. You know, when I came to my senses and realized I can't do this anymore. But it was a music school where all I know is the guy had all kinds of plaques on the wall and everything. So I said to the guy, hey man, like I'm interested in guitar lessons. Like I'd love to talk to you about that. So it was weird. It felt like a scene in Jaws. He's like, let me see your hands. Like what? Takes my hands. And he's like, you have giant hands. He goes, these are not the hands of a guitar player. He goes, you'll never get great. He's like, and he explained to me why. And, you know, people have disputed. No, he's wrong. Actually, I think he's very right. I don't have the correct dexterity the way a guitar is designed. Yeah. And, you know, to be great, I can play a bar chord or two, but my hand is just too big for that thing. Okay. So it's like, man, that's tough. So I would say for me, it was like always kind of a letdown because when I see other guitar players, I'm always like, I wish I can do that. So people are like, you can play piano. I'm like, dude, look at me. Could you imagine me on a piano?
Oh yeah, you can pick up that, pick the saxophone up, do something. But you know, like that's how I grew up. It was how do I figure out how to fund? At that time, I was teaching guitar. It was just so I could help mom pay rent. And so I realized that you would work, and it took work and it took sweat, to, make ends meet. And so that's really never stopped. And it was just kind of a hunger of when we moved to Nashville, man, I realized I was paying what I had to pay for as an artist. I had to pay for people to do graphics, photos, videos, websites, all that. Yeah. And so I realized, and even at a church, I was a worship pastor at a church, and we needed graphics. We needed videos done. And I had, luckily, a church that paid for Photoshop. And I just learned how to do Photoshop. And then when I moved to Nashville, I was like, well, I have a set of skills that I would have to pay someone else to do this stuff.
A particular set of skills.
Exactly. And so, dude, that's how I funded our first year of life in Nashville was how can I charge people with I know the necessities of an artist because I need them, and I'll save money by doing them for myself, and then I could offer my services to other artists that need that done. Yeah. They're going to pay for it somewhere. Yeah. Why can't I be the guy? And so I made all my lyric videos. I made lyric videos for other artists. Oh, wow. I made graphics and did video work and all that kind of stuff. Built websites, so many websites, and I didn't know how to do any of that at first, but I put the time in. And so I realized pretty early on that I really loved the entrepreneurship of taking on things that most people may not, and figuring out how to make it work. And
I think I've always had the entrepreneurial bug too. From a similar story to you, I don't know, I think I wanted to buy a candy bar. My mom's like, no, can't afford it. What? Which never made sense because my parents always bought themselves things, Yeah. But it was I remember one day drinking a soda in the back of my mom's car. My sister, I think, was there too. And, I was like, I'm done with my soda. I got to throw this away. My mom's like, no, we're going to return it. I'm like, what do you mean? And she explained to me how, at least in New York, you get 5 cents back for every can. And I'm like, wait, you get 5 cents? So if you got a lot of cans, you can get more money. And she's like, yep. So I'm like, wow. So I remember I saw a lot of cans in the garbage at the beach. I saw a lot of cans at the golf course. Can I just go collect? I can just collect them. And so my mom's like, yeah, you can do it. So that whole summer when I was I probably wasn't 5, but I was probably 7 or 8. It was like, hey, now back then when I was a kid, you can drop a 7 or 8-year-old off at a park somewhere and leave.
Jeez,
like that was
what a time.
That was the thing.
What a time.
I mean, you know, I was like 6, 7, 8. I'd be down at the local marina. My mom or dad would drop me off in the morning. I'd fish all day. They'd pick me up.
Wow.
Like you could do that back then. You can't do that
Jeez.
anymore. But and anyway, but you get dropped off places and just, you know, come back with a trash bag full of cans. Like I made money, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, we had, back on Long Island, New York, we had, like bad nor'easters that would flood our neighborhood. And, you know, right away, it's funny because there were kids that had a boat and they're bringing it up and telling people it's $20, we'll bring you to your house. So, you know, and I'll never forget this. I said to my friend, and then people were like, no, thanks, because they didn't want to pay $20. So I said to this kid, Wayne, that I was friends with back then, who was helping me, I was like, dude, we should just tell people we're doing it for free, but we accept tips. And he's like, why would we do that? I'm like, well, look at all the people who keep walking up and they're charging and they're not doing it. But I was like, what if they'll give us 10? We'll take that. It's money.
Yeah.
Bro, people were giving us $100 bills. Like,
Jeez.
you know what I mean? It didn't matter. The other kids gave up and went home.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, I made so much money, my dad took it away from me. Like, you know, he was just like, no, this can't be in your room.
Yeah.
If you need your money, ask your mother. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I think I had like $500 and I was like 12.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa. You don't need that kind of
Right.
cash in your room,
Right.
buddy. But yeah, so I get it. It's like, if you always find ways to monetize and it makes you feel like free and successful, like
Well,
you're not a slave to something.
Totally.
Yeah.
And, you know, to fast forward to now, I want to be able to get to do ministry. I don't want to have to
Right.
do ministry.
Right.
Because then it turns into a job that I have to monetize enough so that my family can eat.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, I just feel icky about that.
It's so hard to find that balance of like, you'd love to come to this church, you'd love to do it, but what they're offering or the amount of people that might come, it's not enough to cover anything. And
Yeah.
you're just like, I can't, and it's hard.
Totally. And a lot of people don't understand the expenses that come.
Right.
You know, like, because I believe in my team, I'm going to give them a wage that is respectable for them.
Right.
And so if I have a 4-piece band, I'm already over $1,000 in an expense just to have those guys with me. Not alone their food, their lodging, the gas mileage that's going to take to get there. A lot of people don't understand what it costs to do those things. And that's okay. Like, that's why we sell T-shirts, and that's why we do all these other things to help fill in the gaps. But for 2020 really is the year I started a coffee company, and I got into real estate.
Nice.
And it was two things. One, I loved coffee. Real estate, I knew nothing about.
Yeah.
But someone recommended this book to me called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I read that, and another guy on the road with me told me about this podcast called BiggerPockets.com. I was like, I'll check these two things out. Rich Dad, Poor Dad was like, oh, my mindset has been scarcity mindset my whole life, because that's all it's been. And so I was like, oh, how do I be a good steward of money? I've never had money to be a steward of. You know, like
I love the mindset thing. Like the one that the biggest one that sticks with me all the time, and is there's one where it's like the poor dad says we can't afford it. Rich dad says we'll find a way to afford it.
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, that's the guy I always got to be. Even forget about money.
Right.
It's like when you have a car problem, right? Like, oh man, like it's broken. Well, how do we fix it? Well, we'll find a way to fix it, or we'll find a way to replace it. Like it's always we'll figure it out.
Yeah,
it has to be.
Yeah, because if you don't, you become a victim, right?
Yeah.
Like a victim to the world of the world is happening to me and I can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Versus I have a place in this world. Like I have a say of how I take care of my family.
Yeah.
I have a say on how I provide for my family. I have a say. I don't have to go work a 9 to 5.
You don't.
I can do these other things and spend more time with my family. You know, so like,
or you can work 24/7.
Welcome to being an entrepreneur.
Right. That's the hard part.
Yeah, but if you can figure out a way. And this is what I've been trying to do. It's just I'm trying to spend more time at home.
Yeah.
Still do my career. Still do what I feel called to do and love to do, and like I felt created to do. I feel like God gave me these gifts, and He also gave me the brain that I have too. So how do I shepherd the gifts God gave me and the intellect God gave me at the same time?
Yeah.
And I do feel weird sometimes about making a business out of ministry, and so I've turned to things that are strictly business.
You just totally just gave me a clickbaitable soundbite right there.
Uh-oh.
Austin French says he's more intelligent than everyone. No, I'm kidding.
No. Listen, I don't know what I'm doing. Dude, I read a ton of books.
Right.
And that's, I think, always being a student.
Yeah.
Is important. And I think that's where the entrepreneur wins, is when we realize we've never made it. Right? Like I look at guys like Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The dude that, I mean, he's a multimillionaire, but the dude is still, he's learning Bitcoin now. And like he's learning NFTs and things like this. I'm like, dude, you've already made it.
Yeah.
But he doesn't feel like he has.
Oh yeah.
And he's never done learning.
You're
And I don't
always
think
having to learn skill sets and
Yeah.
things. And that's one of the reasons why I started this podcast, was because I love learning from others.
Yeah.
And the older I get, the harder it is to remember, so I got to record it. So why not share it with people?
Yeah.
But even going into this, like, honestly, and I probably should even say this publicly, but like, I had never done a podcast, but I knew I could build a great studio. Like, I mean, I knew, because I know tech.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
that's your skill sets, right?
Well,
Yeah.
and a lot of it came from just needing it. Like, for argument's sake, like all these cables that you see, I handmade myself. Why? Because I've bought enough crappy ones to know that ain't gonna fly.
Yeah.
And it's cheaper to actually make
your
them
cables
yourself with high quality stuff. So it's like, I knew from the ground up I could build this place, and I knew, okay, well, I don't know anything about lighting, but I know someone who does.
Yeah.
Will you teach me lighting? Yes. Will you teach me cameras? Yes.
Yeah.
Before you know it, you have a team and a skill set around you to be able to do something that can provide for you, and maybe even use those skill sets to benefit more people than if you just took a 9-to-5.
Because you are willing to learn.
Yeah. And you're willing to take a bit of a risk.
Yeah. There's got to be risk. There's got to be risk.
100%.
Yeah.
And I wish more people knew that. I mean, it's interesting. Like, because again, like one of my businesses is also a reselling business. Like, usually from like July to like October, my wife and I will go garage selling every weekend, or we'll even go to like Goodwills and stuff and find stuff and flip stuff, man. And sometimes, I think last year, I think my total final count, I 7x'd what I put into it.
Wow.
That's
great.
And it was easy. It was just come home, take pictures of it, list it on the internet, ship it in the morning. Easy. Like anyone can do that.
Yeah.
Anyone.
Yeah.
And I think that's for me, and is just like you said, for me, my goal is to build other things that give me the ability to go, yeah, I can do that show.
Right. Because, I mean, why are we doing this, right? Like, why did we start making music?
Yeah.
And I never want to lose sight of that. Yeah. And I never want to stop answering that question, because it's so important. And so if it is a monetary thing to where, like, man, my kids are going to go hungry, I have to find a way to solve that problem. Yeah. So that I can go do the ministry that I feel called to do. And so, I picked up a lot this past few years.
Have you at any point during your career ever felt like, I love doing this, and man, there's so much fruit from it, but has there ever been anything that comes that you're just like, have you ever been like, I think I'm done with this? Has that happened?
Not yet. Man, again, the way I feel about the industry in its current state, number one, I'm grateful to have a seat at the table, whatever that table looks like. And that's what I've tried to keep my perspective on. Like you said, I'm not selling out arenas, but if a few hundred people show up, that's more than the 10 people that showed up, the year before, or the one person that I played a show for back in high school, with their face against the wall because it was a prayer night, like a 24-hour prayer service that I played at 2 a.m. And like, I just feel grateful. And I think when I stop being grateful for what I have in front of me, here's something my mom left me as a nugget of wisdom. I went to Winter Jam I was 13 years old, and I remember seeing the Newsboys play and saying, "Mom, I'd love to do this one day." Yeah. And she was like, "Well, you need to learn to be faithful where you're at first." Yeah. I didn't know what that meant. But I went home and I was like, okay, I'm a part of a church with 50 people in it. Our youth group is 4 kids, and all of their parents either work here or deacons or whatever. And so I guess this is what being faithful with my gifts look like. It doesn't look like an arena stage.
Right.
And so that's what I began to do. It was like, all right, we made a band. Well, then we realized the whole youth group was in the band. We had no one to play to. So we're like, well, how do we be faithful with this? We all have gifts. We're all writing songs. We're leading worship, but we have no one to lead worship to. Yeah. And so the opportunity there was just calling around to youth groups in our town, be like, hey, can we just come one Wednesday? Our youth group is all in the youth band, and we have no one to play to. Right. Would you just let us come lead worship for your youth group one night a month? Yeah. And so we became everyone else's youth band,
wow. Yeah.
In town, and it was a small town, but that's how it got started. And it was being faithful with crappy sound systems. It was being faithful with, people complaining that we had drums, so that we bought electric drums that sounded like trash, but we were hitting pads. You hear the pads over the drum sounds, but we were faithful where we were at.
Right.
And I think a lot of us, if we can just be faithful with where we're at, man. If I've played arenas now, I've been on those tours. Sometimes I feel like I prefer the 10-person room.
I'm so glad you said that. It's crazy. And even when I've gotten to, I've been blessed with opportunity to play in front of a lot of people there, and it's dope. Yeah, it really is. But there's something that happens where I'm like, it's kind of like, for instance, the difference is, and this is the best analogy. I agree with you, man. There's something about those small amounts of people at those small, intimate type things that just, you leave with a different feeling. Yeah. And the way I equate it to is, I remember being like a teen, and you always hung out in groups, right? It's always your groups. Yeah. But then there was those occasional times where it was just maybe like you and one other person. And sometimes you connect on a level, like you have those talks go deeper.
Totally.
And it changes you for the better. You have this different feeling. And it's like that. And there's so many times where we'll play a festival, and I wish sometimes I almost I'll sometimes on the way home try to find a church that we can just play at. I don't care how many people are there. We just want to lead worship acoustically, because there's just something that often feels like it's missing in front of the lot of people that is there in the small. Yeah. I'm glad you said that, because that definitely shows your heart and shows what you're about, and I think it's also easy for people to not think you're about that, because when you have the bigger things going on.
Yeah.
I know I've been accused of we drove up to Nebraska, we played a festival. Now we played for free. We drove there for free, but it was an expensive weekend for me. So I made sure to mention our merch during it twice during the set, Somebody didn't like what I had to say, and they brought up, I was at that festival, and, I've never seen a bigger huckster in my life. And I'm like, what did I do? Yeah. I really asked them, what are you talking about? And they were like, oh, well, you mentioned your merch twice, and I didn't see anyone at your merch table, which, by the way, that we had a record merch day that day. So God provided. Yeah. I paid my band, and actually, I was able to pay myself something for the first time that whole year. So I was actually able to take my kids out to dinner. Yeah. It was really nice to be able to go, wow, this worked out, because I really thought I was going to be adding to my credit card debt. Yeah. That's the thing, as an indie artist, it kills me when people would accuse me of, you're only in this for the money. I'm like, oh, if that's
true. Money? Where did the money come from?
Why am I $40,000 in debt, my guy? Yeah. What are you talking about?
Where is the money? Have you seen the money? I haven't seen that yet. Yeah. No, I get it.
It's crazy. So, I love love your heart. I love the way that you're steadfast in it. Like, even the people don't know who are maybe watching and listening to this is that, like, we had probably a good hour-ish conversation prior to all this. And, you know, we did get into where, you know, honestly, I was almost half expecting, like, okay, this is an entrepreneur guy, so he's going to be about the business stuff with the industry thing. And man, you were just like, yeah, it's there. I hate it. And like, you're legit like, nah, man, what I do is ministry. It's not what I do. Yeah. And I really respect that big. Thanks, because, you know, I don't think everyone's called to be exactly what you are. I think that that's your place and your thing. You know, I always say, like, maybe guys like you're the guys with the hard message, the clear ministry message. I'm like that great guy. I'm like the guy who's like the cool uncle that shows up, you know, like he lets you do whatever he wants. He throws, you know, I'll give you ice cream. Don't worry. And then I leave. Like, I'm that guy. And I think there's a place for the cool uncle too, you know? So, but as far as the ministry, I think at the end of the day, I think it's a weird thing, because I think everyone just if it has something to do with Jesus, they call it ministry right away. Yeah. Yeah. No,
and I've seen that.
Yeah. So that just, you know, so for me, I've struggled with calling what I do ministry anymore. Yeah. Because even even this podcast, like, it's not necessarily a Christian podcast. Yeah. While I am a Christian artist, and most of my guests are Christian music industry people, because one, I find them fascinating. I find them interesting. I know I can learn stuff from them. So that's the pool that I pick from. Yeah. But, you know, I also have guests lined up that are not from the Christian. One or two of them don't even believe in God. And that's okay, because, you know what? We're probably going to end up in a situation where I'm learning from them why. Yeah, because half the time, how many people raised in church really understand why people don't believe in God? I don't think they really know.
Listen, man, if you put enough believers in a room and spend an hour with them, you're going to figure out if they're really a believer or not. The scripture says, out of the mouth, the heart flows. Yep. And you're going to figure out who's God in their life pretty quickly by what they want to talk about, what they're obsessed about, what they can't, you know, get behind or get past. The thing that's controlling their life is probably going to come out. And that's why I think spending conversations and time in conversation with people is important. Yeah. You know, because I think you'll discover that even an atheist, you know, like you said, they're there for a reason, and probably been hurt by the church. Yep. People have been, you know, stomped over in the name of Jesus, and they associate Jesus with the people in their life that have hurt them, that claimed Jesus, right? I mean, I'm an example of that. My parents were in ministry. Yeah. My dad was physically and verbally abusive behind closed doors, begged us not to talk about it or show our bruises at church. I hated Christians. Yeah. Didn't want to be one. And I judged Jesus because people told me at church my dad was the godliest man they'd ever met. So as an 8-year-old boy, I didn't want to be a Christian. I didn't want to be a godly man, because the godliest man in my life beat his wife and kids behind closed doors. Why would I want to be a Christian? That's insane. Like, it's a nightmare. It's a monster.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard too, because like there was a time in our world, in our American history, when someone said, Jim there, he's a Christian, and that's like all you had to say. You just knew. Like, it meant something. Yeah. Now, unfortunately, I feel like it's like, he's a Christian. Okay, what kind of Christian? You know, now it's like, is he a Republican?
Right. Jeez, man.
Like, it's gone so weird now, where it's, you know, what does that even mean anymore?
Right.
You know,
when it should mean is I'm a work in progress, a person who's realized I'm not God. Yeah. And I'm really willing to enter a journey where I discover who is God, and I submit my life to Him. Yeah. And realizing that submission is an ongoing process. In the church, we call it sanctification. Yeah. Like, it's an ongoing process of sin showing its head and us repenting of it and turning away from it. And we will never be perfect on this side of heaven. And so why are we expecting each other to be? Maybe we should spur each other on in good faith and say, man, I'm supporting you, brother. Like, I don't have it figured out either. Like, me and my wife had this conversation just last night. It's like, in you've heard of the love languages probably.
Yeah.
But there's also apologetic languages about how people apologize to you matters, how they apologize. Like I need you just to say I'm sorry. Like and I heal from that. My wife needs I am sorry for, like, to recount the situation of what the wrongdoing was. I met other people the same way. And because I realized that I'm saying I'm sorry. Why can't we move on from this? It's because the apology wasn't her apologetic language. And so in the church we have this problem too. Is like we don't take time to understand people that, like, I'm sorry. Shouldn't you be over it by now? Like I said, I'm sorry. Like, can we move forward? We don't want to take the time that it takes to heal. We don't want to take the process because everything in our world is instant, right? Like I should just say it and we move on.
Well, I think one of the biggest things for me in that vein, in the apology language, is when people say, "I'm sorry you feel that way."
It's like, you're the problem.
Right. It's
I'll say I'm sorry because you're offended.
Yeah. Or like the idea of like, "Oh, dude, you took that wrong." And I'm like, wait, hold on. Like for me, and I was the biggest offender of that, of like, "Oh, you took it the wrong way." It's like, "Oh man, that's not the way I meant to convey it." Is like, you got to own it.
Yep.
Hey man, whoa.
Owning your offense.
Yeah. I did not mean to make you feel that way. What I've learned to do is, and this is so new, was so new for me, but someone taught me that you go, "Hey man, whoa," like, because there's times when you might say something and it was the truth, or you meant it, or you meant what was said, but it was a lot of the way you conveyed it is what the problem was.
Yeah.
I've learned to say, "Hey, so like, what is a way I could have conveyed that to you that wouldn't have made you feel that way?"
Yeah.
I've had to learn that. And now, because I feel like, well, if the answer is, well, to not have said that at all, I don't think that's the answer, because I felt like that had to be addressed. But what's a way I could have done that? Because I feel like we have to learn how to approach everybody.
Yeah, I think that's it. Is people don't know how to approach it.
Well, because what I've realized is in my own life is that, again, and this just came from again, I mean, I'm a work in progress, trying to figure it out, is I've learned that one is I have to stop telling people what I know and what I think. What I have to start doing is telling people what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah. That's great.
That's why, like I said, I've rebranded this podcast. Like I said, this is probably episode like 10 or 11 of the rebranded podcast, because I felt like, well, I had to mention that I'm questioning everything. Tom Golly questions everything because I don't know anything. I want to know. I want to understand. And even when I do understand, I'm still going to want to understand, why do I understand?
Yeah.
Is there another way to look at it? Because at the end of the day, man, that's what I think. I think that's what makes people great. I think that's what used to make the church great, is I think that people were always trying to, because I think you're seeking God.
Yeah.
But I think we act as if we found God.
Right.
And now it's like we found him, and now we're going to wave him around like a sword or some trophy and tell everyone what to do. When the fact is, it's like we're supposed to seek him always.
Totally.
There's nothing in scripture that talks about finding him.
Yeah.
So it's interesting when people, like, I even hear songs that are like, "I found God on the corner of First and Amistad." No, you didn't. You didn't find him anywhere. He's there. But you're always supposed to seek him.
Well, and
because he's always moving.
Totally. I mean, and Scripture does talk about seek him and you'll find him if you search with your whole heart. Like, and I think that's the thing, is we're afraid. A lot of times we're afraid that our version of Jesus isn't actually going to match up with the real one. Right. So if we actually seek, if we actually dig, we're not going to like what we find. Because it's going to make us feel bad.
Well, I personally feel like we'll find him when we die.
Yeah,
like that's when we've officially found him. I think we'll always be in search of him.
But I think just like the disciples walked with Jesus.
True.
Right? Yeah. They had hand in hand face encounters with holy God. If it depends on your theology, but
sure.
But if we believe the Son of God was fully God and fully human, they spent time with God, with Jesus. And so I think when Scripture says, I am going to prepare a place for you, but I'm sending a helper. I'm sending one greater than myself. And you will do greater things than me. I think the Holy Spirit is that. I think if we seek the Spirit in our life, now this gets theological, and I'm okay with that. But I think we do get to seek God and find Him. I think when we realize we don't understand Him, that's the thing. Yeah. And you said it, like we feel like we're PhDs of God, and we have Him, and that's the problem. And we just talked about it a minute ago about being an entrepreneur, and I think this is how I approach my faith as well. I don't think I have everything figured out, but I have spent time with Jesus. I have spent time with the Holy Spirit. Yeah. And all I can do is speak on, just like the disciples did, his experience. Yeah. Right? So I can speak of my experience with the Holy Spirit. Yeah. I can experience what God has done in my life, the miracles I've seen happen in my life, the transformation of who I was is not who I am anymore. Yeah. I can tell you those things. And I can tell you that if you spend time with Jesus, if you look the same as you did before you say you found God, then you probably didn't meet Him. Yeah. Because that's not what a relationship is. Man, when my wife met me, I had a Bieber swoop haircut. I had the ugliest shoes, and I look back on those pictures, I'm like, man, who was I? Like, I was a different person.
I mean, come on. I think the Bieber swoop doesn't make you a bad person.
Not a bad person, maybe a bad haircut. But the thing is I look totally different now than I did, 10 years ago when we met. Yeah. Because my life has been made better by someone who showed me that there was better haircuts than a Justin Bieber swoop and better shoes than shoes with holes in them all over the place that I thought were cool. She makes me a better man, just like spending time with Jesus makes me a better human. Because my humanness is starting to disappear, and my adoption into the kingdom, my priesthood, my royal priesthood, is starting to take shape. Yeah. And so, that's the transformation, and that's what I would say about spending time with God is I do think we can seek Him. I do think we can find Him to a level.
Yeah. Right. That's what I meant. I didn't mean you can't find Him. But I still feel like even if we found Him, we should still seek Him. For instance, like this is the analogy, right? Like you married your wife, but you still need to pursue her.
Absolutely.
You can't just be like, I got her, I'm good.
And when do things tank? Is when I stop pursuing.
Yeah, that's more what I meant to clarify myself. Yeah. Again, that's one of my personal issues. A lot of times is I speak and people go, "That's what he meant." No, not a fleshed out thought.
Well, that's a great thing about conversation.
100%.
Right? So we can go there and clarify together. And you were like, actually, no, that's actually what I meant.
Which I appreciate. You clearly have an ability to go, I think that's what he meant, so I'm going to roll with that. Yeah. But for real, I think one of the biggest issues right now in Christianity is the fact that, and you can agree with me or disagree. I'd love to get your take on this. Because I share this because I'm guilty of this. I'm probably still guilty of it, even though I'm aware of it. But I feel like, so a great example is this, right? Like smoking, right? Gives you cancer, right?
Right.
How do you know?
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
Somebody told you.
Yeah.
Right? It's the popular belief.
Right.
Right? And it's true. But how do you know? Right. So it's the same thing. It's like, I feel like what's happened in modern day, and a lot of it has to do, I think, with social media is, you always see the meme, like, seems legit. Right.
Yeah,
so,
right.
and I'm guilty of it too. Like I've seen an artist explain a song, the scripture, Luke chapter 7 talks about this. So we wrote this song, and I'm like, oh, cool. That's what that verse means. Because I respect that artist, I respect that person, and I'm like, that's cool. So I roll with it. And then it's like, wait a minute, like, did I really look into what that means? So what I see is, and you see it all over social media nowadays, where, and every time people throw Bible at me in any kind of conversation ever, I'm always like, well, why are you throwing that verse at me? And it's like, and then they'll explain it. I go, well, how do you know it's what it means?
Right.
It's like, now, because someone told you.
Yeah.
So I struggle with that because a lot of times it's like, there's popular belief.
Totally.
There's, and I'm not saying it's wrong. But it's like, how do you know? It's like we only know a lot of things. And that's where like why I have a lot of empathy for the deconstruction movement, because a lot of people come from some of those churches that have really, 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 let's call them hardcore beliefs and values that some of these people come and they research themselves, they pray on it, they really look into it and go, you know what? I think we got this wrong. And then it's like it ruins their family, it ruins
Right.
everything. And it's like, I think that the biggest problem in Christianity, again, like I said, going back to what I said earlier, is, we like a lot of people will lean so hard on the popular belief rather than really dig in and dive for themselves. I mean, that's a problem in everything. I mean, even with modern medicine, like we go to the doctor and we just believe because this guy's a doctor, he knows that this is the right call for me. He knows, oh yeah, he says I should have my stomach, made smaller by surgery so I can lose weight. Like he says, that's a good thing for me. It may not be.
Right.
Or these pills will fix me. It may make things worse. You don't know.
Yeah.
And I think that that's sort of the one issue I run into is I feel like, Paul talked about so much of, a lot of his battle of trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I think we all sort of forget that, like, that's the arena we need to be in, is trying to figure it out, not trying to be a bunch of experts.
Totally. Man, here's what I think, my opinion on that is I think 3 words, really: submission, fear, and trembling. So, number one, no one wants to submit to anyone. I mean, no one likes being told what to do. And that's a big reason people don't like church, is they're taught that the pastor is the leader and that what he says goes. Now, there's beauty in that, and then there's a lot of fault that can be found there. Well, what if the pastor's in an unhealthy place? Yeah. What if his theology is actually damaging his congregation more than helping? That's where the whole deconstruction thing comes from too, is like people that have been under leadership that's hurt them or led them astray. And man, that's the problem. I think we have to realize is, number one, I do believe in church. I believe in community. I believe that God, if the Bible, and here's the thing, if you don't believe the Bible is written, the written, breathing word of God, then don't care. Don't go to church. Don't believe. That's on you. What I believe and what I choose to believe and build my life upon is that the Bible is God-breathed. I'm going to spend my whole life digging into what that means. And if there's things in there like that eldership is a part of a church staff, church leadership, then I'm going to go to a church that has elders. All right. Well, if I'm going to a church where the pastor is the CEO and there is nobody around him, I'm not going to trust that church because there's not a biblical, what I see of me reading the Bible. And that's where I come in with the fear and trembling thing. Like, is I need to read the Bible like it is the breath of God. And then I need to work out the things that I see in my life with trembling, which means I need to be cautious. That means that if a pastor is on a stage, just because he's my pastor doesn't mean he's not human. Right. So if I take a sermon as face value, which is, man, we love to do that. We post clips. I do it. I post clips of things that I agree with, but maybe somewhere in the message I didn't agree with something, so I didn't post that part, or maybe the church didn't put it out. It's so easy to do those things, right? But what I think is, if I'm going to sit under leadership at a church, I need to listen to the sermon intently, because I believe God has gifted pastors. That's biblical. Like, that's in that God-breathed book that I build my life upon, and that they're a part of the necessary part of the church.
It is interesting because, like, what you just said is what I've had to try to learn how to do when I listen to any sermon by anybody. Yeah. Because I don't know. Again, I don't know. I don't know what. I'm still trying to figure out what it is in me that does this, but a lot of times it's like, why is this guy the leader? Like this, you put us in almost any other situation in life. This guy's not going to be the leader.
Yeah.
So why is he the leader here now? So I've learned, but like, okay, like, clearly if God's using him as a mouthpiece, that's why he's the leader.
Right.
So let me listen to that. And I got to say, there are some people who I think are awful leaders that preach better than anybody.
Yeah.
God uses their sermons, just sometimes the things that they have to do as a pastor in such amazing ways. So sometimes I used to very much be a guy who threw the baby out with the bathwater all the time.
Yeah.
And then now I feel like I'm starting to become like a big advocate of not throwing baby out with the bathwater. It's like, yeah, you may not like the church that guy's part of.
Right.
You may not like yesterday's message by that guy, but today's message. People don't like Joel Osteen.
Yeah.
But you know what? How many stories have you heard of Joel Osteen being on at 3:00 in the morning in a hotel room somewhere,
Right.
and someone was like, you know what? I need Jesus in my life. That's happened.
Yeah.
You may not like a lot of aspects of it. You may not like things you've been told, whatever. But dude, God's using it. So be like, all right, I'm about that. Hey, if God, whatever God's doing to use that, I'm about it. Because again, I know it's so easy to look at the flaws and look at the things that you feel don't measure up. And I think that, like for me, unfortunately, I think for me personally, I look at myself the same way that I look at other things. And it's, and that can be challenging too. You look at all the ways you yourself don't measure up. But so it's like, you look at everything in life and it's like, man, what, and I feel like a lot of times we miss it because we're just like dismissing things because, oh, I heard this. Oh, I heard that. Oh, yesterday's sermon, I think that was unbiblical. Well, now what? You haven't said something unbiblical before?
Right. And then say something about it.
Right.
Like, you should weigh what we're hearing, especially from a pulpit. You should weigh it with the Bible.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
Here's.
Or if you learn something new.
Yeah.
That you went, hey guys, I just want to say for years, I was of the belief of this, and I was of the belief that this scripture talked about this, and now I have learned, or I'm learning, or I'm starting to question that belief. Like, I would love to see sermons that are a little more like that, because I've known pastors who literally are like, have told me like, yeah, I've had to preach a message on something, and man, like I came away from the sermon going, wait, I'm not sure I really believe what I just said. I may need to dive deeper into that.
Yeah.
And then they never tell the church that. And I'm like, why not?
You need honesty, man.
Yeah.
And also, just to hit on this, because I think this needs to be said, a lot of times we put the role of a pastor or a leader at a church, we expect them to embody everything that was supposed to make up the church in one person. So Scripture says that he's gifted some people to be teachers. And sometimes that's all they are. They're amazing teachers, but they're a crappy pastor because they don't know how to meet someone there. But God says that's what a pastor does. That's not what a teacher does. A teacher's really good at knowledge. He is the Bible nerd, right? And he's really good at taking that wisdom and teaching it to people. But he may not be the pastor shepherd that we're wanting. And Scripture says elders are supposed to do that too.
The other thing that can happen too is, a lot of times those and this is true for me. I've had this happen where I've had pastors that I've served at a lot of churches and I've helped, and the pastor almost becomes like a father figure in a way.
Yeah.
And the thing is that one, he didn't ask for that role in my life, but, clearly, again, like I lost my dad at 23 and I found myself realizing, wait a minute, like I'm like holding this guy subconsciously in a standard, like he should be my dad. He should be a guy I can look up to and trust, and he's got my back. And it's like, that's not his role.
Right.
I put him in a role because for some reason, I think we often expect, even our worship leaders sometimes, we expect them like some of us just, we want community. So we feel like that guy's going to fill it. Even us as artists sometimes, we get fans who want to message us. And like, I've had people be like, can I have your phone number? Like, hey man, I don't know. I've never had a good explanation on why you can't have my phone number. I can't believe I have to explain it sometimes, but I'm like, hey, you know what? I've promised my family that I wouldn't be that accessible. You can message me here on Instagram or whatever. That's no problem. Whatever it is, but it's like, I think that's a problem for a lot of people, whether they realize that they're even doing that. Is that, a lot of us, I think all of us have holes in us.
For sure.
And we're hoping that someone fills it.
Yeah.
And I think the end of the day is we lean toward tangible people because we could see them, we could touch them, we can feel them.
Yeah.
Whereas the only thing that's going to fill that hole is Jesus.
Totally. And this is where I think the church plays a part. Is because Jesus is the head of the body, right? Mm-hmm. But it is a body. And our gifts, say mine is music, yours is music as well, it's meant to edify the body, build up the body, make us better. So what I think a cool role that we get to do is we get to give people their fight song, right? Like we get to give people something that they can play in their car when they're just feeling down and alone. And it points them to Jesus, right? The head of the body. But because I'm using my gift, I'm strengthening a brother and sister in Christ. I'm not supposed to be the one they're looking to.
Right.
The one I'm singing to is their fight song.
Yeah.
And I think...
But tell that to the people who are like, who don't like a Facebook post and be like, you're supposed to be above reproach. You're supposed to be this. Like, I don't know. Like, I just do exactly what you just said. I don't know. I just hopefully put songs out that, again, I think what you're saying is like, hey, I hope I want to write songs that put words on the lips of people that point to Jesus. So when they're singing along, they're singing about Jesus, to Jesus. That's the goal.
Well, look at the life of these hymn writers, like if we're going to go there,
right.
Like you got to live life. We've lived, I write about my experiences. I write about my shortcomings. I write about my struggles, my doubts, my fears, my life, because I know there's someone else out there feeling the same thing. And so, like, yes, I do think we are called to live above reproach. I think as a leader, especially someone who is coming to my concert, they're looking at me and saying, well, this guy, I'm going to give this guy the opportunity to speak into my life. I think we should hold that with fear and trembling. Yeah. I think we should really be aware of what we're saying. I think it is very important. If someone's listening to you, that means they gave you credibility. And as soon as you have credibility, you have responsibility.
Yeah.
And so I have a responsibility to give someone that's not heresy. I have to give them something that matches up with the Bible, and that if they test it, they're going to find out it was true based on the scope of what we're looking at. And so, yeah, man, I feel like that's important, and I just don't know if a lot of people are holding that weight.
Yeah,
and if I could say what my biggest frustration is in the industry sometimes is how little thought goes into lyrics sometimes, or how little fear and trembling goes into making the music. I think in proper context, I can sing a song because I know the context of the writers. I know the writers personally. I know what their story is, but they put it in a congregational way. And this is where people say, worship music is amazing. Radio music is so different. The difference between the two usually is that CCM music, it's I, and worship is we. We got to be careful with. And that's a big reason I don't write a lot of worship music, is because I know everyone in that room has different circumstances than me. And when they say, I've seen you move a mountain, and I know you can do it again, their little girl just died, and they're expecting God to resurrect that little girl from the dead. It may not happen. But
that's deep.
And so when we say, I know you'll do it again, and then God doesn't do it again, they feel let down, they feel hurt, and they feel jaded that God didn't do what I just sang that he can do.
Yeah, he doesn't always make... That's the thing. Like, we hear, like, Waymaker, it's like, not always.
He can.
He can.
And he does, but we put ourselves in an expectation on God when, man, the person that's... and hear me for what I'm saying, is that we're not all on spiritual same levels. Like, there's baby Christians in the audience. There are mature, seasoned believers that have been through miracles and they've been through famine. Yeah. And they know what it means to watch God provide in the ways they didn't even know they needed provided for. Yeah. A baby Christian that hears God can heal a leper, right? And that they've seen it happen in the Bible. Well, I have cancer. God can touch me and heal me, but what if he chooses not to? Yeah.
And that's the hard thing, I think, like even for me. So, again, being an entrepreneur, I think you let's face it, you know, there's a lot of things that you do that fail.
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
And
For every one thing that succeeds, right? It's like 100 things die.
But you never look at the things that you did and fail and go, I did everything right. There's usually the stuff that you did wrong. So I struggled pretty hard, and not that my faith got shaken, but I was pretty mad at God when my mom died. Not that she died, like it wasn't that. Like it was time. She was ready.
Yeah.
It was a long cancer battle, but we did everything right. I mean, we did everything we were supposed to do.
Yeah.
I mean, we even did like thing. At one point, they were going to put her in hospice like a year, like 6 months in, because they're like, yeah, she's not eating, she can't eat. And I did research and I found, hey, Smoothie King actually makes a smoothie specifically for cancer patients, where they can give them 2,000 calories in something that's this big. So it's like, and I started giving her that, and she started gaining weight again, and she started being able to eat more food. And it's like, that was the answer. So it's like, we did everything the way we were supposed to do it, and everything was working until it just didn't. And it's like, what? Wait a minute. So that's always the hard thing, where it's like, exactly what you just talked about was how I was feeling around that time, being like, we sing all these songs, Waymaker, Miracle Worker, or the I'll See You Do It Again. It's like, well, it's like he can make a way, right? But when he already made the way, and we did the way, but we didn't get there, what is happening?
Yeah.
And that's the hard thing to swallow sometimes. And it's cool. I was just more mad at the fact that, like, that was my logic of like, God, when there's no way, you'll make one. But when you've made a way and I followed it and didn't get to the destination, this sucks. This isn't like, at least in my time of during that was like, this is not okay. You owe me something here, and that's a terrible posture to have for a long time of, God, you owe me now.
But do you feel like you had that perspective because of Christian culture?
I don't know. If I'm being completely honest, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think it helped.
Yeah.
I think what we talked about earlier of, where I had said earlier how we should be trying to, figure it out. Not say what we know, but say what we're trying to figure out.
Right.
Well, I think in that season, I know the answers. I know what we need to do. The doctors know what they need to do. I'm going to follow that. We know when we don't know.
Yeah.
And I think that in those moments, or in that season, I think I just had to come to realize, going, you know what? God, maybe it wasn't the way. It was the way that I thought was the way.
Right.
So the issue was my perception in putting my faith in that as that's the way. Where thinking about it, in hindsight, hey God, how much did I lean on you during that season?
Right.
How much did I turn to you in prayer, for decision making?
Right.
How much did that? So what I thought was his failure was mine.
Yeah.
And it took a while to get there.
Yeah. It's a journey.
Did.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the beauty of God, and this is where people have disagreed with me. You can get mad at God. You can go, this is your fault, God. And he goes, because he knows you'll figure it out. Or hopefully you figure it out. But I feel like, and if he really wrote our story, if he really is the author and finisher of our faith, we're not letting him down when we get pissed at him. We're not letting him down when we doubt him.
It reminds me of the story of Jonah. And what we weren't told about in Sunday school with that story is the end of the story, where Jonah is under a tree, and he's looking at the town that just got delivered and saying, God, I thought you were going to destroy them. I wanted to watch. Like, why didn't you do it?
Yep.
Like, why would you save these people? I'm mad at you. And guess what? Jonah sits there and he just falls over and dies at the end. Like, bitter, mean, and not repentive. Sometimes, but he was a messenger for God. Like, he brought a city to salvation because of, number one, it wasn't easy for him to get there, but two, I think it's supposed to be a warning sign for us. Is that, number one, we don't control the will of God, but we can be obedient to God. submission is what we're lacking.
Well, I heard a quote recently that made me think, man, I think more Christians need to adopt this concept. I actually saw it in a movie trailer. I don't even know what movie, but the quote just stood out, and it's so correct. It said, "Good men plant trees of which they'll never know they'll never know the shade, or they'll never sit in the shade of."
Yep.
And I'm like, man, that's what good Christians do. They plant seeds of which they'll never reap the harvest.
Never. Yeah.
Ever. And that's the problem, is I think we've become a world, due to our phones, the instant gratification, the customization of everything. I think that, again, I think it's like too much of it's funny. We talked about talking about too much of almost anything could be bad. So I think we have too much information at our fingertips. I think we have too much, because think about this. Dude, if I tell you what a scripture means, you can Google that scripture and you will find an exact opposite of what I said. And you'll find an article, you'll find something. You'll find a song, or you'll find something. That's the problem nowadays. Yeah. There's too much information out there for us, I think, to handle, because I think I think our brains, as unlimited as people claim they are, I think our brains can only process so much.
For sure. Yeah.
But man, this has been killer conversation. This is we've gone pretty deep. I've really enjoyed this, and I've really enjoyed getting to hear some of your perspectives on some of those topics, because there's people who may not even go where you went with some of this stuff. So I really appreciate that, man.
Well, man, anytime there's a microphone in front of my face, I just want to be honest with people. And life's too short to be fake, right? And if we can be honest, I think there's going to be bumps, there's going to be bruises along the way. And like you said, we're figuring it out. I'm not a scholar, but I do want to know who Jesus is. And I think I'm going to be wrong sometimes, because I'm not God, and I was never meant to be. But man, I get to spend time with him, and when I spend time with him, and I work through this, what I call this is edifying each other. And anybody listening to this as well is it's okay to have questions. It's okay to bring those questions to the table. And like we're doing, we're sitting across the table and we're asking questions and giving our best answer, knowing that we're still human.
Well, I think that's one of the problems too, as us as artists, songwriters, or anyone who's trying to do anything ministry wise. We feel this pressure to answer questions, to have the answers. And a good example of sort of that season. So, like I said, my mom had passed away, right after COVID. So from the end of 2020 into early 2021, I was dealing with a lot. I mean, I don't have a great relationship with some of my siblings, and my mom, during the few months when it was toward the end of my mom's life, there was a lot of issues. My mom chose to not continue pursuing any further treatments. It was just, she was at the end. It was just time. I mean, it was she looked at it look, I could have 6 months, or if I try that treatment, I have a month. I don't, and even if I do, she's like, my life isn't going to improve. It's just going to be more of this. I can't do it. Well, that was the choice that was made. Well, I have older siblings who, decided to attack me like I talked her into that, because to them, the burden, being my mom's caretaker was a burden. It was hard. But to them, it was, I just didn't want it anymore. And if I'm being completely honest, anyone who's a caretaker of anybody, there's a small piece of them that doesn't want it anymore. But not enough to go, let's end this. That didn't happen. But I was, of course you get accused. There's a lot of hurts, right? A lot of things going on in that season for me. My music career is I don't know, maybe it's over. It's COVID. I don't know what to do. I had family issues. So I wrote this song with a buddy of mine. And the whole idea, I had, from the minute we were writing it, I'm like, dude, I'm going to put this out, and it's going to sound like a demo when I do that, because I wanted it to literally sound like I was in a room with a piano, and there was just a microphone nearby. That was the intent of this is a peek in, because I've had people critique the production, and I'm like, yeah, dude, let me explain. This is what. I probably should have put parentheses demo in the title, but the point was, in the whole song, was this idea of I know what the scripture says, I know what God says about me, I know what I am, but I still feel like absolute trash, you know? And it's just basically, I think the core, I don't even know the words of the song at this point. It's been so long since I've heard it. I've never performed it. It was not meant to be performed. Yeah. But it was just sort of a confessional song where it's just like, you know, like basically it was just asking God, why do I feel this way? When I know that I'm like, why do I choose to, I know I can walk out of this prison cell anytime I want. Why do I stay in it? I don't understand. And in the right, even, my buddy was like, but man, like, I think the bridge needs to be like, you know, I know you're a God and I know you're like, no, I don't know. Because I'm in pain. I'm hurting. If I was laying on the ground bleeding, right, my gut's everywhere because I've just been destroyed, I'm not going to be like, I know you'll save me, God. I might be like, why did you do this to me? That end scene, right, of that movie. And I felt like this is a moment for me to just be real and go, in this moment, right now, I don't know anything. And so what we did do in the bridge is, I know the answers, I confess. So why am I still struggling with this? Like that, because it's so simple to go, well, you know what John Scripture says. Right. I know, but it doesn't change it. Why, God? And it kind of probably has a lot to do with why you wrote your song. Why God? Same vibe. Yeah. But you know, but I wanted to write a song that didn't answer the question, that didn't have this hope, happy, God is good, because I felt like, here's that song of lament everyone claims they need. And man, it is my least popular song.
Totally.
And it's okay. For me, it was just, I just wanted to share with people my pain.
Yep.
And go, here. Because the other alternative was make an angry rock song where I'm like, yeah! Like, I don't want to do that. I want to do that,
dude,
but I'm not going to do
that. There should be songs for all seasons. And, you know, I wish there was a little bit more of that in CCM. Yeah. And I've tried to do that. And, like, again, that was, like, my least performing song as well. But it's still necessary. And it's still a part of who I am. And it's still a part of where people are at. Like, tell me one other thing, other experience in the human experience that 100% of people will experience. Tell me, besides death.
Right.
Someone's going to die. I mean, it's just part of it. And you know, the beginning of my song is, why, God, do people have to die? I had radio stations tell me they wouldn't play it because they didn't feel like it would relate to their audience. And I'm like, what other song? Like, what? Are you telling me that not 100% of your listeners are going to be faced with death sometime in their life? At the end of the day, we have to be willing to be honest. And, you know, whatever happens with our honesty, hopefully it just creates a safe place for people to be vulnerable, for them. And my greatest goal in life is for my questions, for my honesty, for my journey to point people to Jesus.
I think the issue is, a lot of times people in ministry or try to be an artist or whatever, they just think, oh, like, everyone has to like me. You know, and
You'll never do it.
That's never going to happen. And you know, the truth is, I think, and this is the battle I ran into, is I ran into a point where I'm like, you know, I watched a video of one of my shows and I'm like, while it was a version of me, it wasn't enough of the real me. Not that it was fake, but it wasn't enough of the real me to be like, wow. I was like, I don't like that guy, you know? And it's like, my buddy, Paul Coleman talks about this all the time. You know, and he talks about this like publicly, so I can share it. But like, he talked about where he came to realize there was an onstage version of him and an offstage, and he didn't like that guy. Most people didn't really like that guy either. And it was like, when he finally just became Paul,
right,
it was a game changer. So it's like, man, for me, I'm sort of in that season where if I'm going to continue doing music, I'm going to be the real Tom Golly.
Yeah.
And I'm so scared. I shouldn't be, because the real Tom Golly isn't scared of anything. But I'm kind of like, man, what about the people who have told me, like, man, we're blessed by what you do, blessed by you.
Can't they still be blessed by your honesty?
I hope so.
You know?
But that's the thing. I hope so. I just don't know. I mean, you know, I've had people, like, I did my office is actually behind the curtain there. But like, I've been, you know, someone gave me a nice, beautiful bottle of whiskey that's on my, you know, it's on my shelf, and someone saw it on camera when I just kind of popped in to say hi on a thing, and someone's like, you know, oh, alcohol, huh? Like, that's of the devil. And I'm just like, wow, like, you know, and they like lost all respect for me. And I'm like, bro, one, that particular bottle is unopened. I'm like, two, I have no problem with, on a Friday night watching a movie with my wife, having a little whiskey. I don't have a problem with that. And I have no problem admitting it. But it's like, why do I have to hide that? I won't, and that's the thing, I won't hide that anymore. Now, again, some people's conviction is, don't do it.
Yeah.
And hey, man, I 1,000% support you in that.
Yep.
But, there's a million things I could say, but it's like, I realized that, like, I didn't like the version of me that had to feel like he had to hide that.
Totally. Be authentic.
Yeah.
Like, man, that was something, and with having conversation with labels, that was really important to me. And I had a little taste of that on a TV show that I was on, where I walked into a room and these people were like, hey, give us your best song. I was like, well, first and foremost, just want to let you know, I know this is a TV show and your job is to make money off of me. I just want to put a stop to the marketability of who you think I could be. This is who I am. And I laid out who I am, what I believe. I presented the gospel to these, 3 atheists in the room. They told me I was going to hell and that they'd see me there. And I'm like, okay, well, cool. But unapologetically, I'm not trying to lead you astray. This is who I am. I'm not trying to say the right things so that you're like, I wonder where this guy stands, I'd rather someone be a turd to me and be honest than you never really know they're being a turd to you.
Yeah. Exactly right.
It's like we need more honesty just in life. Like there's so much unsaid things that get that are unsaid that people think they just understand that they don't. Just say what you mean.
So how do you operate in Nashville in such a way? Because so many people are like, dude, we should write. Dude, we should get coffee together. And then they give you their number and it's the last you ever hear from them.
Yeah,
or
totally.
It's like, hey man, to be honest with you, you're one of the few artists that I've met who are like, here's my number. And I always am like, well, see if they text me back. And it's like, you're one of a small percentage who are like, hey, I gave you my number for a reason. Of course, I'm going to hit you back,
Well, also, it's like, I want to be a man of my word.
Yeah, yeah.
And so if I say I'm going to do something, I want to do it.
Yeah.
Even having to reschedule, we had to reschedule this.
We did, yeah.
But it was like, it was important for me, to make this happen because I gave you my word. Yeah. And so if I don't have time for someone, I will let them know.
Let them know, yeah.
I was like, hey, I honestly am in a crazy season of my life.
Yeah.
I don't have time for that right now. Yeah. And to be honest, like I'm doing so many other things. Yeah. I have to be really careful about what I let into my life because it can distract me from my other things. Yeah. And so I try to be honest. How is that going in Nashville? There's so many people, the
Nashville swerve.
The Nashville swerve. That's true. To be honest, having a team of people helps, I can be honest when someone say, hey, I'm not a good manager of my time with those kind of things. My manager actually gets paid to do that. So I'm going to give you his number. Mm-hmm. Go talk to him. If he feels like it's important and it's something I need to do, he'll pass it along to me.
So translation, that's how you say no.
In a way, but still yes at the same time. Like he'll be like, hey, I think this is really good. Yeah. I think you should squeeze this in. Or be like, hey, to be honest, what is this going to add to your life except for stress? Yeah. And he was like, do you need more stress right now? Can you handle it? And I'm like, actually, I can't. And he'll be like, I'll tell them no. Mm-hmm. And so I really do get, I at least probably get 80% of the request to me. And then he's a good buffer of saying either no or another time or yes, let's do it.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And that's where a team comes in.
Yeah,
right?
No, he's definitely done well by you. That's for sure. You know? I've talked with Jason once. The dude knows his stuff, man. And he's I remember seeing like a whole interview like with his music, like his experience in the industry and what led him to focus on being like a Christian artist manager. And it's pretty powerful stuff, man.
Oh man, I think he's way more inspiring than I am. I love that guy. And
he was a songwriter once too, right?
That's how I got it started. Yeah. He wrote a Christian #1 hit.
Yeah,
back
he had
in the day.
a pretty big hit. Yeah.
Yep. And was a Jewish atheist while he did that. He wrote that song about a girl.
Yeah.
And a Christian label found out about it and was like, I think we could change a couple lyrics and this be a CCM song. And that's how he got started. Yeah. He won an ASCAP award for it and everything. People are gonna do with your songs what they're gonna do with your songs. But I think we should just keep making them. I think we should just continue to be faithful with the gift God gave us.
Yeah. That's all you can do. And that's sort of been, it's crazy how, have you experienced this like I have, where, have you ever wrote a song where maybe sometimes, you know, it sort of speaks to you when you write it, but then it's been out a while, and then, you know, maybe, I don't know, for some reason you hear it or you've playing it and you're like, oh man, this song's everything I need right now, you know? And my last single that I put out is a song called Serenity. And it's basically just, we kind of reworked this whole Serenity prayer. And man, that has been huge for me. Again, being an entrepreneur, building a business, trying to figure out what comes next with what I do with my music, everything, is that serenity, all the words of that Serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, which is when, you know, and you being an entrepreneur, like, you sometimes feel like you can do anything. You move mountains because you sometimes scale the unscalable. You know, you make the impossible happen.
Right.
When someone's like, there's
sometimes.
no way this is going to work. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, boom, you figure it out.
Yeah.
And then it's like, you feel invincible. But it's like, there are things I cannot change.
Totally.
You know, and sometimes it really does take a certain level of wisdom to know the difference between what you can control and what you can't. And that for me has been like, man, my own music lately has been, I mean, I don't like to listen to my own stuff, but lately I've had to, because I do have a show coming up, and it's like, I mean, I did a live stream last week on no rehearsal, and I told the guy, like, I don't think I'm going to remember the words, and I honestly couldn't, so I just made up new ones in the spot. Mostly they were like, you know, the new ones were like, you know, same melody, but I don't remember the words. I'm gonna come up with something. You know, I even did something. That was funny.
There you go.
But yeah, it's pretty bad. So I've had to listen to my own stuff again, and I'm like, I mean, honestly, in a lot of cases, it's like, man, this is helping me right now.
Yeah, totally.
It's crazy. I guess that's kind of like journaling, right? You go back and read your own journals.
It is. So I write songs about where I'm at, and sometimes you forget where you've been. And so for me, listening to my music is kind of where I was. I just added a song in my set I haven't played in 3 years, and it was the title track of my first record, and I wrote it about our adoption process with our little boy. And to be honest, I mean, that was 5 years ago.
Oh wow!
When that happened, when I adopted him, and so yeah, it was like I almost forgot that happened that way, and what I was feeling in that season, and prayers I was praying. Yeah. So it is like a journal, you know. Yeah. For me, it's like revisiting seasons of my life, you know. So I try to write currently what I'm feeling, and currently what I'm dealing with, because it is like a timestamp for me. Like, as I go back and listen later, I'm like, oh yeah. God did that. Yeah. You know, and also it's kind of like, man, I was praying that prayer and I didn't see the answer of that until 5 years later, you know? Yeah. But it's good to remember where God has you, and making music for me is a lot like that.
So, man, as we wrap up, I think one of the last things I want to touch on with you, and, you know, I've wished I've asked this to more of my guests, but you know, you've had a pretty cool career. You've had songs on the radio. You've toured with some of my heroes. You know, I mean, it's definitely like what you've accomplished is super awesome and admirable. But I know that even with successes and even things from, you know, kind of the outside looking in view, things always look a little better maybe than they actually are, or whatever. Do you have any regrets? Like, has there been anything that you wish you would have done differently in this process? You know,
I didn't think there were until 2020 happened, you know, and I didn't miss any important days, like birthdays and things. I made a rule, you know, like when I first started, I wasn't going to miss anniversaries. I wasn't going to miss birthdays. I was going to be there. And then I got to be a t-ball coach during 2020 for my little boys' baseball team. And I realized, you know, there were games that I wasn't at because I was touring beforehand. And I'm like, you know, it wasn't a big deal. It didn't seem like a big deal. It wasn't a big deal to my family. My kid played with the dirt more than he played, you know, like baseball. Yeah. And so we were like, it'll be fine. But then I realized it really wasn't. Like, it wasn't fine. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think the regret was doing 200, you know, days on the road. when I could have done half of that and still provided for my family and still seen a lot more life. And so, you know, my kids are 6, 4, and 2 right now, and I've decided I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not going to miss what I missed before. I'm going to be home more, and it's made me, I think, a better husband, a better dad, and I don't want to miss the grunt work of being a dad, because it felt like a lot of times when I was on the road, I was just coming in for the highlights.
Yeah.
And I don't want to miss the grunt work.
Yeah.
I don't want to miss the sleepless nights, the dirty diapers, the messy things. Like, I don't want to miss it. The grunt work is where the life is, and that's what I'm focusing more on. So yeah, a regret I think I have is there's things I wish I wouldn't missed, and I think I caught it early enough to where God can redeem those things, and I've already seen those things.
It's wild, man. Like exactly the same vein that you're saying. Like, you know, again, I hit 2019. Things were starting to pick up. You know, it was looking like going into 2020. I had more dates already on the calendar as of January that year, like for the year, than I had ever had before. And I hadn't even tried booking yet. It was just opportunities where people were hitting me up. I'm like, whoa, this is happening. And then COVID happened. But toward the end of 2019, I had bought a computer off of Darren Mulligan from the We Are Messengers. And I met up with him parking lot, you know, and we'd cross paths here and there, you know, and he was just super cool. And, you know, we got into a conversation, and I remember in it, I was like, yeah, I'm nobody, man. I did said that. And he goes, no, man. And I can't really mimic his accent, but he's like, man, you're not nobody. He's like, dude, he's like, you work your tail off. He's like, trust me, people see it. I promise you. Just keep working hard. But he goes, I want to warn you about something. I'm like, what? And he's like, dude, he's like, don't forsake your family. And he was telling me, like, you can always play another show. You can always, you know, always write another song. But he's like, all of a sudden you're going to be like, yo, I missed it.
Yeah.
And you're going to, you know, and he's like, just be careful of that. And I remember coming away from that being like, what's he talking about? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, and I really didn't, it didn't really catch me in the moment. It was just kind of like, well, yeah, I don't know. I don't do that. And then it was like COVID happened, and I was home all the time. And, you know, I remember, like, my daughter asked me one time, like, she said to me, it was going to be her birthday. And she's like, are you going to be home for my birthday? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? She goes, well, last year we did my birthday a week early because, and I didn't think it mattered because, you know, I mean, also I'm at an age now where my birthday, don't even acknowledge it. But, like, you know, I'm just like, what? You got to do it a week earlier. Isn't that awesome? And it's like, apparently, no, it's not awesome.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, oh, wow, I have done that, haven't I?
Yeah.
And I started thinking about it, and I started thinking about the last 5 years, going, man, what about all the times that, you know, I could have done this, but, oh, I have a right. Oh, I have a rehearsal. I can't. Oh, we have a show booked. You know, I'm going to be gone that week. Like, I regret that. Because at the end of the day, like Darren said to me, there's always going to be another show.
Yeah.
There could always be another show.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, what's more important? Because the people the people I play in front of that show, sure, there might be some people whose lives are changed. Great. But at no point is anyone who was at that show going to be at let's say I didn't go. Let's say I canceled. I didn't go to the show. I didn't say yes. No, none of those people who would have been there are going to be on the couch with a therapist,
Right.
saying that, like, you know, trying to figure out why they have this area of their life where they're broken, and go, it's because this artist wasn't there.
Right. No one's going to say that.
But this child that I love and would die for might.
Yeah.
You know, my failures become their biggest hurdle, can become their biggest hurdles in life. So totally, man, you got such an amazing head on your shoulders that you're aware of that, that you're in that stay that way.
Yeah, man.
Because, I mean, even now, like, you know, my kids, like, as an entrepreneur, there's times where I have to say no to them. I'm sorry, I cannot do that thing you want me to do, as bad as I want to.
Right.
It's like, but I try my best these days to catch myself going, wait a minute, can I choose to put this down today?
Yeah.
And more often than I realize sometimes, I absolutely can put this down today.
Yeah.
But, appointments, meetings, you have to respect the people's time. You can't just cancel it because your kid wants to do something, or something came up last minute you weren't aware of. But yeah, as far as this thing, it's like, man, I love your perspective. And I think that my hope is that the stories we just shared inspire other people who hear it to go, man, like, I'm going to make sure I'm more like Austin, and
make sure you're more like Jesus. But I'm grateful to be just someone to hopefully point you in the right direction.
Well, yeah. That's what I meant. Thanks.
I'm just here to clarify.
No, and that's totally fine. I mean, I think that's the right way to look at it, man. But dude, it has been awesome. So obviously people can follow you on Instagram. Yeah. It's just simply
Austin French. Yeah.
Austin French. For AustinFrench.com. Do you have any new music on the way?
I got a live record coming out this summer. Nice. New music coming out the top of next year. So
nice. And you got some more shows, I'm sure, coming at the end of the year? Awesome.
Yep. Got a Big Daddy Weave tour we're doing in the fall, and just a bunch of dates we're excited about. Yeah.
Very nice. Well, dude, it has been an absolute privilege and an honor to have you come in here and chat with me for the last this one's been 2 hours. Okay.
Yeah, well,
cool.
This has been fun.
This has been awesome, man. So I appreciate you, and God bless. This has been another episode of Tom Golly Questions Everything. Please like, follow, subscribe on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Peace.